market grew at 15% a year for the last 5 years.
You're seeing a very new type of buyer come in. There are women at the peak of their career who are saying, listen, I want to allocate a certain amount of money to make the home beautiful, to buy works of art that I enjoy.
For most people, an auction is like something they've seen in a James Bond movie. You have all these rich people in suits.
We have a bunch of very rowdy people that usually come into our auctions having a jolly good time. Serious collectors who come and sit in the front and want to bid. And then you have a lot of people who just come for fun. Right. So there is no obligation to bid. Right. There is no obligation to buy. What we think the painting is worth is arrived at looking at a variety of factors. First, who is the artist? How rare are his works to come by? Point number 2, which is the quality. So sure, you can have 20 Hussein drawings, but what is the quality of them? What is the period they come from? You look at provenance, which is essentially trying to trace the ownership history of the work from the time it left the artist's studio. Condition of a painting. Has it been restored? Is it torn? Does it have cracks? Is there paint loss? All the things that help us determine this low estimate and this highest. Egos and auctions go hand in hand. There is no question about that, right? It's a public display of power, wealth, all those things. And it has been proven, neurologically, different things happen in our brain if you are bidding in an auction, okay? It's a huge adrenaline rush. And it's a huge release of dopamine. That is what, unfortunately, we are preying on, right? As auctioneers, you are looking to rely on everybody's competitive spirit rising to the fore at the very right minute, which says, I can try one more. I can try one more.
Art consultant told me 70-80% of what she sees are fake.
The quality of fakes today and the quality of stories that are spun is very high. There are no good.
Right.
Okay, signed certificate by Hussein and a photo, it means nothing.
You had to beg someone to buy a Gaitonde for 5 lakh rupees basically.
Yeah.
What is the value of that Gaitonde?
You want to make me cry on the show, don't you?
Yeah, of course.
40 crore on average.
Which is 1000x in how many years?
25.
I don't think anything has got that much appreciation. Is this a good time for a new buyer to enter the market? Let's just pause for a moment. Now, some people like quick answers, while some people like to think deeply. If you're in the second group, the secret sauce is made for you. So please hit subscribe. Okay. Everyone reads about these records that are set and hears that 100 crores, 150 crores, auctions. How does it work? How does an artwork go from the artist's studio, onto the walls of a collector? What is the process and where do auctions fit in the middle?
So if you look at the art ecosystem, and this works for any market really, but we'll talk about the Indian market specifically, you have works that are created in artist studios or in residencies or in art camps. They will make their way to a gallery or to a structured seller of sorts, right? So the days where artists would sell directly to collectors, that is largely gone now and largely absent. So you'll usually find most artists have a gallery who represents them. They work with one gallery. Sometimes it's 2 if one is within India, one is international. But usually it's kind of exclusive and you work with one gallery, maybe sometimes 2. That's it. So the work goes from the artist studio to the gallery. The gallery is then responsible. So your gallerist is a very important part of the artist's life and the collector's life. So they are responsible for presenting the work, the body of work, in a way that explains the artist's ideology, the artist's inspiration, and looking for, of course, the best placements for those works. So be it collectors, be it institutions, be it individuals, be it companies, etc. So that is what we call the primary market, okay, which is artist and gallery or their dealer. The auction world is a totally separate world. It is the secondary market. You come into the auction market once you have an established primary market. So if you are a young artist creating very actively in your studio, still having shows and creating different bodies of work, you are not going to necessarily, you should not, technically speaking, be in an auction. once an artist has established prices, they could be alive or they could be no longer painting. But it is about their demand, and it is about how much people are looking for their works, where you are then forced
There
to
has
come.
to be a market. The artist has to be mature enough,
Yes.
dead or alive,
Yes,
to create, for there to be a running market.
Exactly.
Like Bitcoin or gold.
and there has to be demand,
Right.
right? And so therefore, to get to service the demand, you will resell a work. So a collector may have a work already in their home, and that comes back onto the market. So you don't usually source works for auctions from artists directly, but it's more from collectors, galleries, people who have works, who've inherited works, and who are looking to sell them on.
Got it. So the auction house is a secondary space.
Secondary space.
Got it.
Yeah.
For most people, an auction is like something they've seen in a James Bond movie, where you have all these rich people in suits and well-dressed women sitting out there, and someone has this thing in their hand going 1, 2, 3 or whatever, sold.
Yeah.
And you put your hand up and you look around and someone's holding a card in their hand. It's like a mystery, like a James Bond movie. It belongs in Monaco or something, along with a casino on the side. So can you tell us how do auctions work exactly, and do you have to dress up?
So the sale room, which is what you're describing, is very exciting, and
Right.
it should be. It's where the actual sale takes place, for a finite period of time, for a couple of hours, or 2 or 3 hours, depending on what you're selling. You don't have to dress up, and
You don't have to dress up.
you do
I
not.
can go like this.
You can go like this.
But I'll feel out of place.
My colleague Dadiba Pandol is never dressing up. He's in
Right.
jeans all the time.
Right.
So that he is the perfect person to look at when you do not need to dress up at all. He is
Right.
your role model there. But no, you don't. It's actually a very casual atmosphere.
Got it.
You can come in, you can leave, you can chit chat. We have a bunch of very rowdy people that usually come into our auctions and kind of hang around and stand at the back of the room. And I've been known to shush them more than once in the
Right.
middle of an auction,
Right.
because they're all bidding against each other and having a jolly good time.
Oh, I see.
But sometimes the volume gets too loud and is very distracting.
Right.
So you do have that group of people. And then you have, serious collectors who come and sit in the front and want to bid. And then you have a lot of people who just come for fun.
Right.
So there is no obligation to bid.
Right.
There is no obligation to buy. The whole premise of an auction is that it is a transparent public platform. So you are not restricting anybody from coming in.
Right.
You want people to come in. You want to encourage people to come in and see what it's all about. And eventually, should they be interested, be tempted to bid at an auction in the future. But it's a relaxed atmosphere.
Right.
So, 200 years ago, when there were, very formal auctions, it was an opportunity to dress up and come.
Mhm.
And still for the evening sales, I don't know if they still do it, but I know when I was at Christie's in New York in the early 2000s, evening sales required a tuxedo for the auctioneer.
Yeah,
and
that's the James
they
Bond
were,
image.
yes. So that's where the James Bond image comes from, right? So that does exist. And of course, there's a certain element of fun to that as well. But by and large, they have relaxed and they are that much more casual now.
Got it. So for someone who's never been to an auction before,
Mhm.
like you said very sweetly that anyone can go and it's not stodgy, you want more and more people, you want to
Yeah.
expand the thing.
Yeah.
What does someone expect when they enter? What is it? They register and just because in my head and many people I've spoken to, you have this picture that, oh, I'll be scratching my hair, I'll do this, and by mistake I bid for a 1 crore work or something like that.
So you walk in, you will be asked if you'd like to register to bid. Because you do need a paddle if you want to bid in the auction. And what does that mean? It means that you have registered your presence with us as the auction house. We have your details. We know where to find you. Should you buy something and not pay the bill?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So you have to do a little bit of those formalities. We do take a deposit from first-time buyers. And that is just because we've realized that is a necessity, because people do tend to be trigger happy. And then, it becomes a problem the next day and going forward.
Like, can you tell us a story where someone bid for something and they're like, no, my wife made a mistake or whatever?
Oh my, there are several. Yeah. My favorite is, when you give your bid to your assistant and you're not able to bid and your poor assistant has made a mistake and has
Poor thing, and it's like 10
overbid,
times their
right?
salary, whatever.
Well, actually, it's true. If you add a zero,
Yeah.
and by mistake, if you add one more zero, it's actually a real problem.
Yeah.
And we've had that. I'm happy to say, though, that the poor buyer who did make the mistake and did put the extra zero is probably laughing his way to the bank now,
Everything is okay.
8 or 9 years later. So finally, we feel vindicated that, because you see, we can't cancel the sale.
Oh, you can't cancel.
You cannot. So when you
because I'm the seller and you've told me that my work is sold
that's
for
the
1
thing.
crore.
That's the thing.
I don't give a shit who made a mistake.
Exactly.
But it was sold, and whether your assistant or you or your wife or your grandfather made a mistake.
It happens. I mean, I have had a husband and wife, and they are great collectors and they are good friends as a result. But I feel so bad. One of their first experiences, they were on the phone bidding, but they were not together. They were on the phone bidding with us, and they were not together. And so the husband made an executive decision, right? That, look, I'm going to bid at this amount, and then bought the painting, absolutely stunning painting.
Of course.
And then had just a complete moment of panic and said, oh gosh, I can't do this, and I can't reach my spouse, and what do I do? And anyway, to cut a long story short, we did end up going to the underbidder. There are, of course, lots of technical situations and circumstances where you do that. But I think whenever we see each other till today, we look at each other and the first thing we say is, damn, you missed a fantastic painting. So yeah,
so
it
managed
haunts
to give it
them.
to someone else, the second highest bidder.
But it haunts them. You do have these stories all the time.
And has anything happened where someone has held the paddle by mistake or something and it's...
Yeah. So that actually, I had one person who told me that as long as my glasses are off, please keep bidding. The minute I put my glasses back on, stop bidding. Okay. So you're sitting in the front row, you've taken your glasses off, 80,000, 85,000, 90,000, and then you put your glasses on. So I know 1 lakh is not your bid. So you do have things, everybody has,
But what does that mean? I didn't understand. Isn't that a weird thing for you to focus on? Because you're busy bidding. I mean, you're busy running the auction.
Sure, but they don't want to be seen lifting a paddle, right?
Oh, they don't? Why?
No, because a lot of times...
This is really like a James Bond moment. Because this is what happens in James Bond movies. Like, you do this or whatever.
We have people who leave the auction room for a particular lot, bid on the phone, come back in. They could be sitting... I remember a client who was sitting in the room but bidding online because they didn't want to be seen lifting a paddle. So, these are all human quirks, right? You don't want to be seen
buying an expensive work.
Anything. Sometimes you feel that if I am seen buying an expensive work, everybody else will say, oh, he's bidding on it, so it must be a fantastic work. I'll also bid.
Right, yeah.
Or, he's bidding on it, let's run the price up, and so anything could. It's
they just feel I get what you're saying. It's like
there are 100 combinations.
Yeah, it's like if you're buying something
right?
important in your life, or you're doing a big deal, you don't want to jinx it.
Exactly.
Before the deal closes, you don't want to tell the whole world, "Oh, I'm going to do this big deal and make so much money." You just keep it quiet, and after it happens, you tell everyone, "I bought that."
And hey, as you know, auctions, anything can happen because it's real time. There is no guaranteed outcome, no matter who you are, what you are. That is the kind of the excitement, and that is what makes auctions so much fun. But because you don't know what's going to happen. So anyway, you come in, you register. If you'd like to register, you get a paddle. If not, you go in and sit down. You'll usually you'll see the auctioneer's podium, you'll see a bid clerk station, you'll see people on the phone who are taking bids from clients who couldn't be there. You'll probably see a TV because now you have online bids coming in, which is really the preferred mode of bidding these days. Everybody loves to, sit at home and bid on an app or bid on a tablet.
More relaxed.
It's your own pace. You don't need to tell people in advance what you want to do. You see something going at a good price, you jump into a lot. You don't have, because the phone is much more structured, right? You have to tell us in advance because we call you. You don't call us, right? So we call you for depending on what lots you've given us, etc. So online, you can do what you like. You can come and bid on any lot. You can wait and see, oh, you know what? This is an attractive price. I missed what I actually
But
wanted.
you're saying online, just to understand, online is being updated in real time.
Yes. So that's what I'm saying. We have a TV screen. So when I, as the auctioneer, am at the podium, I am looking at the room, right, which is actual bidders in the room. I'm looking at the phone banks, which are members of our team that are on the phone with various clients. And I'm looking at a TV screen, which is reflecting our online platform that is transmitting bids in real time.
Oh.
And
So
my
you have
colleague
three
Sonali,
sources of information.
I have actually fourth, which is my own absentee bids, which people have left. So you could say, Mallika, I'm not available. Please put a bid in your book at 60 lakh for me on lot 75. So of course you'll have to sign and make sure that it's all in writing. But then I put that in for you, and then the auctioneer executes that bid on your behalf
At that time.
At that time in real time. So
you have four. Just to be clear, when you're conducting an auction, you have four sources of information.
Yes.
You have the room with the people bidding. You have your team. How many people are there sitting talking on the phone?
Could be between kind of 8 and 12.
8 and 12 people who are sitting on the phone talking to clients, doing telephone bids.
Uh-huh.
You have a TV screen.
Yes.
Which is showing all the online bids happening.
Yes.
It should be quite a decent amount of people from all over the bloody world.
Oh my, yes.
And lastly, you have, what do you call it?
Absentee bids.
Absentee bids.
Which are in my auctioneer's book.
Which someone has given you before and said that I want to pay 60 lakhs for this lot, this painting in this
Correct.
lot. So you have to look at all these things.
Yes.
And keep tallying them and moving up the ladder or not. Or
So, I mean, I have lots of help.
Looking at all these things, there's so many different numbers. One thing is called the buyer's premium.
Yes.
Which is a massive cost, apparently, that shocks everyone for their first time.
It's a deadly number.
What is that? What is the buyer's premium? And what happens if you buy something for like a crore? I think that's
let's use
a big number that everyone likes nowadays.
Yeah. Our average lot value in 2025 for bundle sales was over a crore, which is fascinating. Right. Utterly fascinating.
And when you say lot size, you mean painting size?
Lot value. So average price paid per
painting was 1 crore.
Painting was over a crore. You have a painting, say, for ease of zeros, because a crore has way too many zeros. Let's just look at 100. Okay. You essentially have to factor a percentage on top of that. And there are various components to it. One is the buyer's premium. The buyer's premium is the charge that the auction house levies upon every purchase. Okay. The percentage that the auction house charges can range from 15%, which is what bundles charges. And I'm happy to say we are the lowest in the market.
God bless you.
God bless us, seriously. And that goes up to 28% at some of the larger auction houses.
In India?
Internationally.
India, no.
India, I think the highest is 20.
So 15 to 20%.
15 to 20 in India.
It's like a commission.
Yes, but up to 28 for Indian art bought abroad. So automatically you're at 128. Okay. So we have two components. You talked about buyer's premium, which is our fee. There is the other part, which is the hammer price, which is the price that you've actually paid for that particular work of art, which is determined with the hammer coming down. Hammer
so 1
price.
crore, as we're saying.
Yeah. That attracts a tax.
Right.
Okay. And in India, we have been very lucky. GST has come down on paintings from 12% to 5%. But depending on which category you're collecting in, that could vary. Silver is 3%, furniture is 18%, whatever. It just depends. Okay. But you need to factor in tax on the hammer price. And then your buyer's premium, because it is a service provided in India, also attracts a service tax, which is again 18%. So kind of long and short of it is, for us, if you spend 100, you will end up at about 123, which includes buyer's premium and the GST on both hammer price and the buyer's premium. There is also duty. There are sometimes import duties that you factor in. Sometimes if you export paintings, you get a GST benefit. There's various things. But essentially, buyer's premium is the auction house's
about 23%.
fee.
If I spend, when the hammer comes down for a crore, I have to spend 23 lakhs more.
Yes. And that includes tax and things.
So you really have to know that if my budget is a crore, I shouldn't spend a crore on a painting because
No.
then I spend a crore 23
No.
basically.
My,
That's, I think,
my-
what some people get a bit.
my most handy piece of advice to any collector who comes in, especially new buyers, is work backwards. Figure out what your final price is and then work backwards. So
Right.
if you want to spend a crore, you know your hammer price cannot exceed 80 lakh, for
80,
example,
yeah,
or
yeah.
85 lakh, whatever. Okay.
Firstly, let's look at those terms. There's a low estimate, high estimate, reserve price. So when I go through this catalog, there's a catalog which has all the artworks that are going to be auctioned.
Yes.
Can you tell us the
With
different numbers that
painstaking
exist?
research that
Right.
goes into the essay.
Right.
It is a general picture of what the work is about.
Right.
So a low estimate and a high estimate is the range that we expect the painting to sell between, or that what we think the painting is worth in the current market. And that is a kind of a painstaking number that is arrived at looking at a variety of factors. Of course, first and foremost will be just the artist. Who is the artist? How rare are his works to come by? Do we see 20 works a year? Do we see one work a year? That automatically determines price in a lot of cases. Amrita Shergill is very hard to come by and hugely desirable. So you're looking at it from a very different perspective, as opposed to, say, a Sousa drawing, right, or a Hussein drawing, who were both highly prolific artists, and so it's not that unusual to see their works. Which brings you to point number 2, which is the quality. So sure, you can have 20 Hussein drawings, but what is the quality of them? What is the period they come from? And depending on the artist, you want certain artists you prefer earlier works in their career, other artists you want more mature works. So again, there are no hard and fast rules. It's dependent entirely on the individual artist and
each artwork is unique in itself.
Absolutely.
You look at all these areas.
Yeah. So you look at rarity, you look at quality, which is very important, and frankly, I think something that will eventually kind of, you'll see that distillation in the market, because quality is what will keep prices for better works higher.
Right.
You look at provenance, which is a very common term. And what do we mean by provenance? You are essentially trying to trace the ownership history of the work from the time it left the artist's studio. So to go back to our earlier kind of, picture of where the work goes. If a work was painted by Raza and it went into a gallery chemold show, wow, wonderful. You can trace that. That you can find an exhibition history from Gallery Chemold, who has wonderful archives. That you can find who it was sold to. You can perhaps find a picture. Very often in a catalog, you'll see a photograph, a black and white photograph of the painting hanging on a wall, with people around it, where it was originally shown.
So evidence, it's a chain of title of evidence.
Exactly.
From the birth of the work
until the present time.
To today.
And it's a huge factor in determining an estimate. Because if it's from a museum, if it's from a very well-known collection, that it has that much more value, right? So all these things help establish value. Condition of a painting. Has it been restored? Is it torn? Does it have cracks? Is there any kind of work that has been done to it, etc.? Is there paint loss? Is there flaking? Going to become more and more important. But those are all the things that help us determine this low estimate and this high estimate. That is the range between which we hope the work will sell for. The reserve is a confidential price between the auction house and the seller, which is the minimum price at which the work can sell. So you have an estimate that is 4 to 6 lakh. Your reserve is 4 lakh or below. Your reserve can never cross your low estimate, because if you've said 4 to 6, you can't say I won't sell it till it gets to 6, right? So you say your reserve is 4 lakh or 3.5 lakh.
The reserve is you come to the reserve, the seller and the auction house agree on the reserve. Below this, I don't want to sell it.
Yes. So you say, okay, let's keep it at 3.5, right? So that once the auctioneer crosses 3.5 lakh and I say I have a bid at 3 lakh 50 on the phone, online, irrespective, that work is selling. But no bidder should know that price. It is a confidential price, right? But you will know once it is selling because I will say I'm selling unless somebody else comes
So
in.
no bidder should know the reserve price.
No, it is utterly confidential.
Oh.
Yeah.
So when you start, do you start at the reserve or do you start?
You start below.
You start below the reserve.
Yeah, you start below.
How much below the reserve?
It's not a formula. It just depends.
Like
So,
10%, 20%.
could be. I mean, a little bit lower. It depends. Again, it depends on the whole
The hype
psychology
behind the
of
work
auction, right? Which is an entirely different.
How
question.
hot is the room?
Yeah.
And the vibe.
What you need to do. I mean, sometimes we have situations where the estimate is 4 to 6. I have absentee bids, and we'll open at 7, right? Because if somebody
you see absentee bids already,
Yes.
and you get a
Yes.
flavor, the
Yeah.
hype. Basically, it's the hype
Yeah.
for that thing. at
because
that
if
point.
somebody's left a bid of 12
Then you
and
know
a bid
that-
of 8,
right.
why am I wasting time and starting at 3?
Right.
Right? So it's
Interesting.
all these different kinds of technical points that are very important. But equally important to know is that you have an estimate of 4 to 6 lakh. Your reserve is 4. You have left me a bid in good faith at 8 lakh
Right.
and said, listen, I'm on a flight. I'm leaving you 8 lakh because I think it's, a good
I want
generous
it.
bid.
Right.
I want it. Or it could be 20 lakh.
Right.
I want it. You get it for me. I can't be around to decide. No problem. If nobody bids above 4, you should get it at 4 lakh.
Yes.
We have no business running you up to 20.
Right.
Okay? Only if there is a competing bidder should you be run up. Otherwise, you will sell at the reserve. So the reserve is the minimum price at which you can sell, and there is no maximum. The maximum is determined by interest,
Of course,
bidders,
of course.
etc.
The value. How do you understand
Sure.
the value? Okay, suppose like you said, you like the work. It looks nice. My family likes it. It'll look good on my wall. Cost 20 lakhs, say, for example.
Okay.
But how do I know if 20 lakhs is the right price? Because the market has gone up a lot, and I'll check, and this work, the same artist was 10 lakhs 3 years ago,
Right.
which is very common.
Right.
How do I know that I'm 20 is right, or is it too high, or what am I doing?
So again, one of the things, because especially with auctions, you do have price and search engines, right? That you can look at all prices. So I can go on to ArtPrice or ArtNet or
okay.
yeah, and you can, for a subscription, it gives you access to tracing prices of Gaitonde all the way back to the first auction in 1995. So you can see,
So artnet.com.
Yeah.
And artprice.com.
Artprice.com. Yeah.
So I guess if you're spending a decent chunk of change,
You should.
You better go there.
You should be doing that regardless, right? Because you should be saying, okay, what did the last 5 works sell for?
That's very interesting.
Yeah. And you can do searches by medium, by size, by period, by artist, of course. So it's a lot of information available. And all the information that these search engines capture are through auctions, because all auctions, by definition of the word, have to publish prices publicly. So in real time, you will see all auctions, the prices are up, and that's irrespective
so you have a pretty
of
clear
who.
indicator.
Yes. So that gives you some information. Galleries, of course, is a little bit harder to understand because they are not required to publish their. And you can always ask a gallery as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions. How did this artist, how was the artist priced in his last show? What are the prices today? Can you do any better on the price for me?
Right.
Don't be afraid. You're not going to look bad. It's just,
people are intimidated.
Of course.
When they go to it's like going to an Hermes store, I guess, for someone. You're a gallery, when you're looking at big money, or even the gallery space naturally, because today the galleries are selling crores and crores of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's the equivalent of going to very high end, like an Hermes store. So
Sure.
there is a slight intimidation factor to a new person who goes there.
And fair enough.
Who doesn't know them and doesn't know that situation to say, how much is it for? Oh, can I get, it's too expensive for me.
Sure. But I'll tell you, all the galleries, and I speak for Mumbai for this specific point, it's those younger buyers who come in with the passion where, I really like this artist and I really respond. So their budgets may not be 7 figures, but their passion is 100%.
Right.
So there is a lot of opportunity, and galleries are very aware that we all need to kind of expand who we look at and expand buyers and increase awareness and increase knowledge, because that is the key.
Yeah. Let's just pause. Subscribing here isn't just about supporting our channel. It's about choosing what kind of thinking you want around you regularly. So if that resonates, you know what to do. So when you're looking at art, you talked about, things that help you to estimate the value of artworks like
Yes.
provenance, the artist, etc., the age of the work.
Mhm.
Another thing is the medium itself.
Yes.
You keep hearing like some of the masters, like a Souza or a Hussein, which you can't afford their oils, but you
Mhm.
can afford their sketches. So what are the different mediums and what is the hierarchy when you look at mediums?
So I'll give you the mediums first. Hierarchy is a slightly more complicated question. So of course, your most traditional medium in India has always been paper, right? Miniature paintings, etc. We have a history of paper, and of course, mural painting on cave walls, etc. So you have paper, you have canvas, you have board, which is like a ply board or a wooden board, masonite board. And then what do you apply on them? So you can do watercolor, which is a relatively thin, transparent, translucent medium. You have gouache, which becomes a slightly thicker medium, and that the binding agents are what kind of determine the opacity of the medium, how easily you can apply them, how quickly they dry, all those different things. Watercolor, gouache, tempera, which uses egg yolk as a binding medium. Jamani Roy used to use it. Ganesh Pine used to
Egg
create.
yolk.
Yeah, it's a binder, right? Ganesh Pine used to create his own kind of tempera. Then, I mean, there are different kinds, but just to give you an example. Then, of course, there's oil, there's acrylic, there's pen, there's pencil, there's graphite, there's charcoal, there's Conti, which, it's all kinds. So, of course, the most popular seems to be oil on canvas or acrylic on canvas. And some of that is just because of scale. Chances are you'll have a canvas, it's easier to have a larger canvas, you paint oil or acrylic on them. It doesn't mean they are more important. It depends on the artist. So you have an artist like Jogen Chaudhary, terrific artist, kind of what we call a second generation post independence. His primary medium is pastel and pen and watercolor on paper. And his average size work is, 12 by 12 inches or maybe 22 by 30 if you're really lucky,
Right.
And his canvases are few and far between. I mean, they're beautiful, but he has made his mark with his small format crosshatch works on paper. So it's not to say that a canvas is automatically the more valuable. Ganesh Pine, as I mentioned.
And what does his just to understand, what does these little watercolor works, what do they sell for nowadays?
Our last auction in March, I think we sold two. One was at 85 lakh hammer, and I think one was at 60, if I'm not mistaken. They go up to kind of a couple of crore. It depends. You can get them at 20, 25 lakh. It depends. It's hugely variant on the subject and things. So in a case like Tayyab or Souza or Hussein, okay, they worked equally well in small format drawings on paper, pencil, ink, or large format canvases, oil or acrylic, depending on the period in their career, right? And of course, the higher value ones by default are the canvases, right? So the large canvases.
That's where my question comes from, because when you see Souzas and Husseins and all, their oils are like tens of crores, and their sketches or are for lakhs.
But again, you could have a really important drawing by Souza, as we saw in his this men's faces that he did from the 1950s. And I think they sold at a ridiculous price last year. I mean, fantastic price, as in ridiculously high.
Yes.
My favorite. But again, quality of work, right? Quality of work determines that. But of course, it's not going to fetch the same price as a 1950s oil on board by Souza. But again, between oil and acrylic. So with Hussein, the early works, which are the kind of the more valuable in terms of what the market perceives as valuable, are oil, right? Because they're thicker paint, etc. But Tayyab, it's acrylic. The later works, and which he came even after the oils, which were the acrylics.
Oh, really?
Yes.
His later works are more valuable.
Yes. Exactly. With tie-up, you want the kind of
That's very. I didn't know that. I mean,
Exactly.
usually, always think the older the better. or
That's
whatever.
what I'm saying. So it is very misleading to establish a hierarchy.
That chalo oldest and oil, for example. That's a typical.
Yeah, exactly. You think that, right? Or somebody will say, but this is acrylic, I only want oil. But why are you making that distinction?
Got
You don't know what that distinction means. And very often, it may not mean anything. It may just be a question of what the artist chose at the time. Sometimes there is an intentional switch, right? Like Hussein intentional switch, Tayyab intentional switch. But sometimes it is just what they had at the time, what their finances allowed, what they had access to. It's not a straightforward answer.
Got it. I just want to talk a little bit more about the psychology of auctions.
Yes.
A very common example I hear is that someone has a painting and they want to sell it for 3 crores, for example. And everyone says, oh my God, it's too expensive, it's too expensive. 6 months later, they put it in an auction and the estimate is 1 to 2 crores, or maybe even up to 3 crores, because that's what
Sure.
he wanted. So they put it at that 2 to 3 crores, but it sells for 5 crores.
Right.
I think this happens all the time.
Very often.
So what does this tell us about the psychology of the what is happening in the people's minds when they're bidding? 3 crores nobody bought, but 5 crores people bought.
So a lot of that is frankly just the magic of the auction room.
The magic of Mallika.
No. This is across the board for all auctioneers.
Right.
I cannot take credit, though I have been accused, but nonetheless, it is the real magic and the spell that gets cast during the 2 hours of the auction. Okay, and it has been proven that neurologically, different things happen in our brain if you are bidding in an auction. Okay, it's a huge adrenaline rush. And it's a huge release of dopamine when you actually buy something and you get something. But you get caught up in the moment. That is what, unfortunately, we are preying on, right? As auctioneers, you are looking to rely on everybody's competitive spirit rising to the fore at the very right minute, which says, I can try one more. And being in a bidding situation with other people, and you see, oh, I know that person, I can bid against them, or even not, right? But you will, unfortunately or fortunately, your brain will say, yeah, no, let's keep trying and let's keep going to those prices.
Because you've already invested time.
Yes, and it's a thrill of the chase, right? You want to take something home. And once you've bid once, it's like, okay, let's keep going. And it's that excitement. Am I going to get it? I know. Why do you bid higher in a card game, to go back to, your poker analogy? Because you want to try. But there is a psychology of auctions where we look forward to a healthy kind of bidding situation. And in that situation, you will very often surpass your limit that you may have set. You will certainly surpass the estimate that the auction house has set. And you create a new price. And it's actually happened, that if you go and ask for a certain price in what we call a private sale, which is off auction, the auction block, you'll be laughed at. So of course you're never going to get that price. But you'll end up making that very same price because you just get caught up in the moment. And before you know it, you're at a whole different...
And how much in this is ego and how much is, rational thinking that, oh, this is worth that much?
I think it's a combination. I don't think it's ego always. There is definitely an element of ego. I've seen ego at charity auctions, because I've been doing a lot of charity auctions since I moved back to India. And that is where you really see ego. And actually, that is where the one time where I think ego works beautifully, because it works in the charity's favor, because you can kind of, really get people riled up to spend a little bit more money than they were hoping to. Exactly. Right? So especially when you're in a room with your peers or with people and there is something to prove, yes, egos and auctions go hand in hand. There is no question about that, right? It's a public display of power, wealth, all those things. I'd like to say that in what we do in a commercial auction setting, it's not always the case because a lot of the time you don't know who you're bidding against. So it's not,
It's not like that. Yeah.
yeah, and you're guessing, but I can outbid so and so, right? But I think that's more a personality type rather than so it's more, I would say, the competitive spirit of someone rather than ego. But in a kind of a social environment, I think it's wonderful because everybody eggs each other on, and you end up making great money
For
for
a
the
charity thing, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to talk a little bit more about. I just want to talk about the Indian art market.
Mhm.
You keep reading about the growth every few months. You read about a record painting being sold. All this. It's in the news definitely. Like the art is this thing. So I really want to demystify that today. One interesting thing I found when I was researching for our podcast was in 2007, which
Mhm.
is 19 years ago.
Mhm.
How time flies.
Seriously.
The Indian art market hit 2,000 crores. Then it crashed to 450 crores in 2009 after the financial crisis.
Yes.
450 crores, mind blowing. Like water.
Yeah.
And it crossed 2,700 crores, the auction market, in 2025 last year.
Yes.
So that's a crazy long 15-year V-shaped recovery. How can a first-time buyer be sure that this kind of thing won't happen again, where it
Where the
goes down
prices
by
fall.
like 75%?
But there were many reasons for that, right?
Sure.
At that time, there was a huge number of speculative buyers in the market, huge number of funds, huge number of people just buying for the sake of investment. Lots of galleries coming into the market and encouraging their artists to paint more, higher kind of output where quality eventually will kind of will suffer. So there were all these different things at the time. Then of course, the financial crash happened. A lot of the speculative buying and the buying just for investment and funds came to a grinding halt. And at the end of the day, the valuation of art is not a scientific process. I can tell you your Hussein is worth 60 lakh. Somebody else will tell you it's worth 70.
You can't put an IRR to it.
Yes,
and all that
and
stuff.
neither of us is wrong, right?
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, it is a judgment call.
Subjective.
Yes, and we are making that judgment, and we are making that that we are coming to those price considerations based on certain factors. But none of those factors have a formula or are tangible, right? It's all about how we envision something.
Wow.
To look upon art as an asset class, no problem, because the kind of values that we are selling at today, you have to look upon it as an asset class, right? You have to look upon
It is an asset class.
yes, and you have to kind of allocate a certain percentage. I don't like to use these financial terms, but yes, you will say, I want to spend X amount on art every year.
Yeah.
And it could be because you'd like to just see it on your walls. You have a new home. You want to finally have a chance to enjoy paintings, whatever. So yes, you should definitely look upon it as an asset because it holds a lot of value. But you cannot kind of box it into a financial instrument box. No.
So the Indian art market grew at 15% a year for the last 5 years, from what I've read, which is a pretty good number. But still at like three and a half thousand crores, which is $400 million now, it's still peanuts compared to the world and China.
Sure.
Someone told me that one of the reasons for this growth is that so many Indians, thousands of Indians are buying houses for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus crore rupees. 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 square, big houses. And when you buy a house for that much, you have to decorate it and therefore have to spend money on art on a very basic level.
Sure.
Do you agree with that kind of connection?
On a practical level, yes, that is definitely a phenomenon that we have seen. So, the kind of landscape of Bombay is changing, as we know. And you see the number of high rises that are coming up in all our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, right? There's just a boom in the number of new
in
apartments.
Luxury real estate.
Yes,
all over
absolutely.
India.
And so, yes, there is definitely a correlation. And we are seeing it because you're seeing a very new type of buyer come in, and these are young buyers, putting you and me in that category too. So
Now we're young. First we were old.
Yeah, but
like,
it's that.
really playing
What I
with
mean is,
my
it's.
feelings here.
I'm not saying it's kind of 70 and 80-year-olds. I'm saying it's guys at the peak of their career, women at the peak of their career, who are saying, listen, I want to allocate a certain amount of money to make the home beautiful, to buy works of art that I enjoy. And it has brought in a whole different kind of buyer. There is no question. There's so many professionals that have come in. The number of lawyers who have started buying art.
Lawyers are making more money than
I
anyone.
mean, yeah, the number of, financial guys who have come in. And, some of them are utterly self-made. It is fantastic, to see these guys come in and buy art the way they are buying. And it's actually superb because some of them just say, look, I want a big Hussein and whatever. And then
I want a big Hussein.
Yeah. And then you have others who really give you a run for your money. I have one client/friend who, I mean, by the time I'm done talking to him, you need a drink because it's like the kind of questions, it's a rigorous analysis of the market. But why this? But why that? At what price? And I find that superb because if you've taken the time to do that research and analysis, it means you're really passionate about what you're buying, But yes, to answer your question, not go off on a tangent, is yes, you are seeing that. You are seeing a very new type of buyer come in, and it's at all price points. So yes, of course, you have that at the top end, right? Who are buying the paintings
who bought 100 crore house and they want to buy.
Yeah, they're buying expensive. But you see that at every level. And what's even nicer to see is that I have so many people that we've worked with who have come in and were initially comfortable buying paintings at 1 to 5 lakh, 5 to 10. And over the last few years, they have changed their budgets, as houses grow bigger, careers get better, etc. So it is really the way a stable and mature market should grow.
Okay, small pause. This is the part where I'm supposed to ask you to subscribe. But honestly, only do it if you want more conversations that actually make you think. That's the whole point of the secret sauce. All right, back to it. I was doing some research and two mind-blowing things came up. One is that the global art market, according to UBS, is $50 billion.
Right.
Which means every year $50 billion of art is sold. That's what it means. Which is, correct. I was shocked. That's a massive market. Out of which the US is 43%.
Yes.
China is 20%.
Yes.
That means in China, that means $10 billion a year of Chinese art is sold in China and all over. $10 billion. India is at 400 million or something, 350 million now with the exchange rate. Not even 1% of the global art market. And therefore China is like more than 20-30x of India. So do those numbers have any meaning? Like, does that, because we're always looking at India and China, does that mean that we are going to see that kind of growth to that China level?
So China also saw a dip, right? So first of all, yes. I mean, last year, I think the Art Basel UBS report was 59 million or something, which was
billion.
A billion, sorry, which was a little bit higher than the year before. And you're right. The US, UK, and China account for most of that. We are in the 1% others of the pie chart when you see it. So China has always been very patriotic in terms of buying their own art. Okay, and that's how it began. So they would very often buy back their antiquities if they were being offered in other countries around the world. Mm-hmm. And once their own artists and their own modern and contemporary movement was, once it got going, they were huge supporters of those artists as well. And what's happened as a natural evolution, which happens anywhere, is that they have now started looking at other categories. So they're looking at Impressionists, they're looking at 20th century European art, they're looking at wine, they're looking at other luxury areas to spend their money, which is what happens in any kind of natural market. That's how collectors grow. So yes, they are very much, they're a few steps ahead of us. We are further back. And again, I mean, if you look at just our population and the number of people that live in India, and of course, we should kind of head down a similar path. I don't know if we'll get to the same numbers. I think it's impossible to know because I think you also have to look at, art catering to a very, 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 very select percentage of our population, and just in terms of where the money is concentrated, right, and where the wealth is concentrated according to the
A very select but very visible.
sure.
Because, like we said, the entire ultra luxury or luxury segment of real estate are going to buy art.
Yes.
So even though as a percentage of India, it's tiny, not even
It's
like
tiny.
point something percent, not even
Yeah.
1%. But visually, it's everyone.
Sure, but
Because
a
when
lot
you
of
drive through
people,
a city, it's all the houses that you see.
it's all the cities, but you see, you have to look at, compared to the size of our population, it's nothing, and how many of those people are actually going to get themselves to an income level, where they can start looking at this. Yes, it's growing wonderful, as
even in
I've
China,
said.
though, it's a small percentage.
Yes. Yeah.
So the question more is that the kind of potential means when I read that, I think the sky is the limit.
Of course it is.
Even though today you're hearing of 100 crores for something and you're like, oh my God, 100 crores, where is it? The question is that you're already looking at numbers today, many multiples more than what they were before. We'll get into that 1,000 times. We did a calculation. Some art work has gone up 1,000 times in the last 25 years. We'll get into that. So on one part, you feel that it's gone up 1,000 times, 1,000 times. Forget it now. It's gone up 100 crores, 50 crores, 20 crores. Where can it go from here? But as you do research, one more thing I want to point out is that in my research, I saw that there's every year in the last few years, there's been like one painting in America, a De Koenig or Borel or whatever, which has sold for the entire value of the Indian art market.
Yes.
3,000 crores, 2,000 crores, 3,000 crores for one painting in America. And that's not very common, but not uncommon.
Not uncommon.
Above 1,000 crores is very common, 100 million plus.
100 million plus is not uncommon.
It's common. Their 1,000 crores is like our 10 crores, basically.
Correct.
So when you look at that, you can't help but think that why will it be different for India? One day, as India grows and people prosper and all this stuff happens, why will it not be the same value?
I think it may be the same for buyers in India. They may be willing to put their money at those levels, but it may not be for a work of Indian art. You see, so there's a difference there as well.
Got it.
So when you're looking at what all these, the top 5 paintings in the world have been, they're not necessarily belonging to artists of one country, right? It is more on a global scale who are considered the masters of their generation, their school, their, whether it's old masters, whether it's impressionists, whether it's...
You're playing in the global circuit.
Exactly.
You have to be a global master.
Exactly. So yes, I think Indian artists will continue to increase in terms of quality works, and hopefully a widening group of artists and a select quality within those artists.
Got it.
But it's also, if you want, Indians can compete at that level even today. We're certainly not lacking the families or the firms or the people that have that kind of access and that kind of money. It's just a question of whether you choose to put your money there.
So the little caveat there, which is that is a Souza or a Tayyab equal to a Picasso or not? As when you reach those lofty levels of hundreds of crores, thousands of crores, or whatever. Because then the guy who's buying it, Mr. Trillionaire, will be like, okay, I can buy a Souza for hundreds of crores, or I can buy a Picasso.
I think to get to those levels, it's exactly what I said. So you need Indians to go to the global market, but you also need global players to come to India, right? Because right now,
the whole market has to expand.
It has to expand
and be part of the global situation.
Because who are the buyers today in India? They are Indians. And who are the buyers at that top end of the market? A, it's tiny, and B, with maybe a couple of exceptions. We've had a superb Japanese collector over the years.
Mostly 99%.
But it's mostly Indians,
or
right?
NRI, but Indians.
Exactly.
Indians.
So I'm saying you have to have international collectors who begin to value our artists.
The demand has to
way.
open up to the rest of the world.
Yes.
Got it. You had given me an anecdote of when you had to beg someone to buy a Gaitonde for 8 lakh rupees or 6, not even 8 lakhs, 10,000 was 5 lakh rupees basically.
Yeah.
And you were laughing at yourself for not having the foresight to buy it.
Kicking myself.
Sorry, yes.
Not laughing,
kicking yourself. And that Gaitonde sold for?
At that time? 10,000, whatever. $8,000, $10,000.
And
Something
now
like
what
that.
is the value of that Gaitonde?
You want to make me cry on the show, don't
Yeah,
you?
of course, why not? It adds viewership.
I mean, 40 crore on average.
40 crores, right? So like 4 or 5 lakhs and 40 crores, which is 1000x, if I got it right. 1000x.
You're better with the zeros than I am.
1000x in how many years?
25.
I don't think anything has got that much appreciation. What has changed now in the market? Because can we see that kind of appreciation going ahead if we buy one of these masters?
I mean, maybe not the 1000x is what you said.
1000.
Yeah, 1000. Yeah, it's a
You
frightening.
missed out.
It's a frightening number. I really missed out. So besides kicking myself, I have others kicking me too. Let
Yes,
me tell
yes.
you, friends and family.
25 years ago,
yeah,
what did we all know?
we knew nothing, and frankly, I was just out of school,
And let's be clear, 4 lakh rupees 25 years ago was
it was a lot of money.
it was a
Yeah,
chunk of change. It wasn't like 4
Yeah.
lakhs today. It was,
yeah.
and
But-
for art, it was a lot of money
But-
also then.
It was.
Yeah.
And for Indian art.
Yeah,
you
for
see.
India. In fact, to be fair, 4 lakh rupees 25 years ago for an Indian art was expensive.
It was expensive.
Like people would have
Yes,
said, "Oh,
yeah.
are you sure you want to buy this work for 4 lakh
Yeah.
rupees?"
It was one of our first auctions in
Ah.
New York when I used to work with
You
crystals.
can't blame yourself too much. Slight
And
kick.
the collector who bought it, I hope he listens to this show because he has promised to will it to me.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. I hope he's
Yeah.
old.
I'm going to remind him. He's not old. I have no problem waiting.
Not
I've
old,
waited
okay.
25 years, but he did say, that he has several. So this was one he.
Oh yeah,
owed me.
several.
Yeah. So I don't think you're going to see those kinds of jumps because that's a once in a kind of lifetime thing,
Yes.
right? But you will continue to see growth again, I'm specifying for specific artists and more importantly, particular works by specific artists. It is not a blanket rule. Every Gaitonde, even though he's one of my favorite artists ever and he can do no wrong, every Gaitonde is not worth that kind of money. Some may be 60, some may be 20. But you're going to see overall, yes, that artist has done much better, but I don't think you're going to see 1000x growth necessarily, but there will consistently be growth because there is a scarcity factor. Scarcity is entirely reliant upon condition,
Right.
because a lot of these works don't necessarily stand the test of time very well. So you're going to be working with a shrinking pool of works by those masters.
Right. The 3 top auction houses in India, Pandol's, Saffron Art and Asta Guru. So in their last few auctions, they have sold pretty much 100% of their works. Does this mean that the market, is this a sign of a frothy market or what do you think?
No. So I think if you look at the analysis, I think we are at 98% something, and I think Saffron and Asta Guru probably at 91 and 93 respectively,
Right.
I want to say. So all that means is that you have a high sell-through rate,
Yes.
right? It's not necessarily frothy. I think if you look at the number of lots sold and the average lot value per work, that is probably a stronger indication of what the market is. And I think none of us should run the risk of offering too many works, because that is when you lose out on pricing. So you have to be quite
You have to
careful.
balance.
You have to balance the number of works. You do want a high sell-through rate, but you shouldn't have a large sale just for the sake of having the sale and not sell works well. That doesn't help anybody.
So 90% sell-through rate
It's
means
pretty good.
It's good, no?
Yes,
I mean,
it's
it's a
very
sign of a healthy
It's a
market,
sign of a healthy market.
but not of a little frothy.
We have already begun to distinguish it. And I think what we need to continue to kind of be very careful about is what you pay top dollar for. That is the sign of a frothy market. When you start paying prices that are too high for works that don't demand that kind of price and are not of that quality, that's when you start running into a problem. And certainly as a fund or somebody who's looking to do it as an investment, you will run into an even bigger problem when you come back to sell.
It seems one area that really drives the value of art, or rather one variable that really drives the value of art, is the rarest of all virtues, patience.
Aha. Yeah.
Is there, I know this is a tough question, but is there a minimum hold period below which buying Indian art just as an investment doesn't make sense?
No. I mean, some people will tell you 3 years, some people will say 5, some people will say 10. And you know what? If you look at practical examples, I'm sure it's worked 50% of the time and it's not worked 50% of the time.
Depends which year you're in.
It depends where you are in the cycle, right?
Yeah.
And where you are. So I think you just have to buy it and put it away and not worry about what the value is going to do, So, for example, I had this investment forum for a group of businessmen from Delhi. And, they were all saying, what should we buy, etc. But I said to them, why don't you first look at what you already have on your walls? Because you guys have bought art to decorate your homes 2 decades ago, right? 20 years ago, before, when the market was at a very different point. So first, just kind of analyze what you've got. And that will give you a very clear picture of your values and where you think you need to, plug holes, buy new things, different artists, add to it, etc. Because it cannot be a short horizon. It just cannot. Maybe you'll get lucky. Dealers or anybody in the market, of course, makes money, right? When you buy something at auction, you flip it for 20%
And
more.
you always hear these stories.
Of course. And there are always those opportunities. But as a rule, I would certainly say give yourself the longest possible lead time you can.
Got it. With art in India, how would you classify, if you had to put in buckets the different tiers of art available today?
Your kind of first generation moderns, which is the progressives and their associates, which is post 1947, right? So that is the obvious names.
The
right?
progressives are, what do you mean by the progressives?
Founded by Sousa. So there was a group of 6 artists that kind of came together in an attempt to understand and create a new identity for Indian art and for themselves. Because, they were kind of assailed on all sides, right? You had British academic influences that were coming in because the British were in India. You've got Bengal school, which was a more traditional wash technique that had been followed before that. Where does their own kind of creativity and individuality come, and where is that seen? Why do they have to be put into these existing schools or buckets? So they came together to say, you know what, India is an independent nation now. We are going to create our own independent styles and
this was called
the Progressive Artists Group.
Yeah, the Progressive Artists.
Yeah, probably it is really the foundation of our modern art movement.
Yes.
So the original members were Sousa, who wrote the manifesto for the group. He was expelled from the JJ School of Art, for profane language, but he was a genius. So, kind of besides the point. So there was Sousa, there was Raza, there was Hussain, there was Gadhe, there was Ara, and there was Bakre. And these were the 6 original members. And then, of course, the group disbanded. Some left, like Raza left very early on in the 1950s. Sousa left for London, Raza left for France. But they had all their associates who kind of, through friendships and everything else in those early years, there was a lot of interchange of information. They spent a lot of time together. There was the Bullabai Institute at Breach Candy, which is opposite Tata Garden now. And it used to house artist studios, and there was artists who would have studios there, performing artists who had studios there. And there was such a lovely exchange of information and thought processes. Gaitonde used to work there, used to, look at the sea for hours. Hussain would come there and meet him. Al-Qazi would put up plays there, before he moved to Delhi. So it was really a creative hub of the time. And that's when all of these artists met.
My next question, basically, again, I come back to suppose someone has 20 lakhs, which, like you said, is a good amount.
Yeah.
To start with, you have 2 paths.
Mm-hmm.
2 paths designed by me.
Okay.
One path is you buy something from a contemporary artist, quite well known. 20 lakhs, you'll get a decently well known one, someone who's been doing something for 10 years or plus or something like that. Even longer, probably. Or the other option is you buy like a Sousa sketch, for example.
Right.
Where you're buying one of the greatest artists of India, definitely, but a sketch. So, let's call it a lesser work of his. Obviously, it's a pencil sketch.
Right.
Or a pen sketch on a, paper or whatever. Same price, two very different things. Of course, on your wall, they look different. You get a little pencil, a pen sketch, or you'll get for 20 lakhs contemporary artists, you can get something massive and that looks much more grand also. How do you see that as an investment? Sorry, I'm asking you, I want you to put your investment hat on. You are also a consultant, your consultant hat on. How do you see that?
I would buy the better quality work. So always buy the best in your budget. And that is, I would probably buy the contemporary work, because if that is a better quality work. So you're saying larger, but I would say more than the size, I would say quality. So chances are the contemporary work you're getting, if you're getting a top quality work by that artist.
Right. One of his better works.
Yes, one of his better works versus a smaller work.
But a good sketch. Not a, like from 1950s. I've done my research a little bit. 1950s Sousa sketch. So, good sketch. Not.
There are many 1950s Sousa sketches.
Right.
I would insist on quality. Buy the best quality in your budget. So it's very difficult just to kind of say buy this or that. I mean, if you're giving me a really detailed crosshatch Sousa sketch from the 1950s or an early Sousa gouache from the 1950s, probably not again for 20 lakh. That's hugely tempting. If it's just any contemporary artist. So I'm saying you have to choose the one that is better quality.
And for that, there's only one way. There's no shortcuts.
No.
To find out the quality, you have to do your goddamn research.
You have to do your research. And you know what? You'll make a mistake. That's okay too. But at least take the time to do the research. I have seen so many collectors who have, who begged for a work by a particular artist. Mallika, please find it, please find it. Now they're like, I don't like it.
They're just obsessed with that name.
A decade later.
I want this. I want Hussein.
No, say it could be not Hussein, not somebody as well established. I really love this artist. 10 years later, they said, we've grown out of it. Yeah. And that's actually wonderful because it shows that your eye is changing. It shows that you are evolving. It shows you're thinking about what is it that appeals to you, doesn't appeal to you. And that is the essence of collecting. Whether you hold it for 5 years or 10 years is.
And of course, it'll be a few lakhs. I'm just getting into practical things.
Yeah.
And you like it, it looks nice and all, but of course it's like 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs. So it's an amount of money, and you don't want to come back buying something and feeling that you didn't, make a wise.
So you want some validation for what you bought.
Yeah, validation, and I think nobody wants to feel like a fool. So one is you like something, but everybody wants to feel that their eye could spot value as well. I mean, like that, the art.
Yeah.
Like.
I think some of it is hit or miss with younger artists.
Right.
So I think you have to go with your gut and what you like and what you enjoy buying and what you enjoy looking at on your wall. Some of them will continue with very successful careers and some of them will go nowhere. I mean, I remember, over the last 10, 12 years, there have been artists who I've bought for collectors, which have gone nowhere. I mean, and it's equally a kind of a misstep on my part as it is anybody else. So you will make those mistakes. Somebody who shows tremendous potential, who kind of ticks all the right boxes when you look at them, and then kind of 3 years later has not progressed and has not done or followed the path that you expected. That can happen too.
How often do you think is a very rough as a percentage if you had
I think with contemporary it's 50-50.
50-50.
Yeah, I think so. So the key is to go to a gallery whose judgment you trust. I'm saying, if you like their program, if you like the kind of artists that they generally seem to have, they have been really good with getting great shows, great awareness, putting their artists in the right places, the right fairs, the right museums, all of that. You'll begin to sense that. And that is what you need to follow with any contemporary artist who is painting very actively. It's all about how their work is presented, the work they produce, and whether they are able to evolve, as I was saying, and not churn out the same work year after year, and how the gallerist presents them, right, in the larger kind of arena.
Right. You have to understand everything about it. You have the Janam Patri of the artist, basically.
Yeah.
Basically.
Which is the right approach. If you can afford to do that, and I don't mean money-wise, if you can afford to do that from a time perspective and kind of effort perspective, I think then you're in the best hands possible.
And I think in a way that's such a nice thing, because therefore what are we saying that, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about, and that's what art gives you the opportunity to do, is that you can be passionate about it, create that passion, develop that passion for it as a hobby, and it can be a good investment also.
Sure.
And you can make both work, but you have to give that time to develop that passion,
Yeah.
that insight, make some mistakes, learn, spend time researching, be part of the community in some way.
When you have it, when it's a passion like that, eventually you will see the gains.
Yes.
Right? But I think you have to approach it with the right attitude and with the kind of correct
You can't just be opportunistic.
attitude. No.
It's
It's
very similar
short-sighted.
in that area. It's very similar to building wealth and investing also.
Sure.
You can't, if you're opportunistic in investing, you're not going to understand anything. You only understand by spending time and reading a lot, meeting people, understanding what is the core thing of the stock market, debt, equity, economics, finance, what the hell do they all mean, looking at the cycles of the world, how does the
Exactly.
Federal Reserve impact India, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
But ultimately, even there, the best people are the long-term players who've done the most. So in the
Absolutely.
long run, there is space for it, but you got to spend time in it. So is this a good time for a new buyer to enter the market?
It's always a good time. I think your price points may be different, but it's a great time because you've got a lot of works to choose from. Increasing number of auctions. So it's a good time to try and see what you like. Now, if you've come in saying, I want to own a work by the progressives and their associates, probably not the greatest time unless you have a
Long horizon.
large budget, right? But otherwise, it's always a good time. Why not? Because you can decide where you want to enter. You can decide what your first work needs to be. I mean, sometimes we have auctions where you have smaller works by some of the more important artists, right? But they present great opportunities for new buyers, right? So if you really want, you keep contemporaries out of it, you really want mod works by the moderns, come in and look at works on paper, look at sketches, look at smaller canvases, etc. So it's always a good time. I don't think the current prices should be a deterrent in any way. I mean, sure, unless you're going to try and buy another Ravi Verma 3 foot by 2 foot, then of course, you'll have to pay the price at this stage because it's hot, right? You're kind of riding that wave.
So there are pockets of value.
I think so.
You have to
There
find.
are always pockets of value.
Always.
Because again, who is determining what the pockets of value are? Why are you letting yourself be bound by what, the 5 or 10 artists that are the drivers of the market? Look beyond that. Why don't restrict yourself to certain things. Go into a gallery and look at who their new shows are, who their new artists are. I mean, some of our galleries have such terrific young artists on their roster, and I don't think...
contemporary.
Yes, and I don't think auction sales are going to affect that at all. So it's a great time to buy. Why not? Right? So, okay, if you want to buy Raza and Hussein, and I'm seeing this because I'm hearing the prices that people are quoting, people are taking a chance. It's a seller's market. Fine, you want it. I want the moon for it. So if you're willing to pay,
there is a theory that the quality will always last, kind of thing, like these
100%.
names.
Not names, quality.
The work also is important, not just
the work
blindly
is
buying
important. The
a
work
Raza
is
or
important.
Hussein.
Yeah, and sometimes when I do a presentation, I show these 2 works by Raza. One is kind of late 90s Bindu. One is 2012 Bindu. Similar size, similar composition, but it's the quality of the work.
What's the difference in price?
I mean, I would think...
Just to understand the discrepancy.
Maybe 1/3.
One-third.
The later work
and visually they look very similar.
Yes, but you can tell. The brushstrokes are looser. The application and the composition is not as crisp and as tight as what you were seeing in the 1990s.
So all these very subtle things.
Very subtle things, but that is what will make it hold its value, right? You can get a big Raza and put it on your wall. And I don't mean to just say Raza.
You can get the bragging rights that, I bought this big Raza.
Yes.
But if you bought the one, like you said, with the finer strokes and in a period, a better period,
Yes,
can be 3x the value.
of course it can. And that
So
is
that is the difference
that is
between.
a very important point that
Right.
you don't always get. The point is not to get the big fat Hussein, right? That is 10 feet by 5 feet, but to get a work of quality. And that is up to the individual buyer. You may want a big work, colorful, different palette to fill a large home, like we were saying. And maybe the 3x2 and 4x2 works he was doing in the 50s and 60s don't cut it. The colors are not bright enough.
The beautiful works.
Exactly. I'm just in layman's terms, right? So all of that is fine, but that it is still a choice of quality.
What is the worst mistake a new Indian art buyer makes that you see repeated again and again and again?
Not doing enough research to know what they are buying and then realizing it is not a correct work. And we're seeing that more and more.
Correct? You mean like fake?
Yes.
Let's get into fakes. That's a good point. An art consultant told me last month that the amount of fakes is just staggering in India. Like she said, 70-80% of what she sees are fake, or she doubts how real they are.
She's not wrong.
What do we do about that? How do we address this issue, and how does someone, because that's everyone's nightmare, that
of course it is.
You buy something, you spend all this time, you think you've researched well and all, and you bought a fake and you spend a lot of money.
So, sometimes that's unfortunate where you've done the research and something you've missed. And that I have to begin by saying could happen to any of us. Okay. Because it is, again, not a science, right? You're going by, you do the due diligence, you do the work, you do the homework, and you go by instinct. It is a combination of all the above. And sometimes you can very well be fooled, right? And therefore you have certain, with auction houses, you have certain policies in place to protect a buyer. But yes, there is a huge and ever increasing number of copies that we see. And it's very simple, right? As the market is exploding and prices are going up, it is just way too tempting. And also with the way technology is progressing, right? With 3D printing and printing outlines and this and that, it's becoming much easier. So a lot of it, I'm sorry to say, is your eye. Again, it comes down to experience, eye. The more you've seen, understand works, it comes down to all of those intangibles. On the practical side, you have to ask all the questions. You can't be afraid to say, where does this come from? Show me, explain to me, speak to the person prior, understand it. You are entitled to ask those questions. The biggest thing to avoid is to fall for a bunch of paperwork. So if somebody comes to me with a signed certificate by Hussein and a photo, it means nothing. Artist's signature means nothing. A certificate signed by the artist means nothing because all these things are so easily
forgeable.
Yeah, it's forgeable. You can just replicate them. It's not difficult at all.
Right.
You have to do a much deeper dive into the history of the work. Where was it exhibited? Has it been shown internationally? Was it sold in an auction? Was it illustrated in a book? Has it been, in any of the artists' monographs, in any of the larger artist publications, what we call a catalog raisonné? So Raza has a catalog raisonné. And
which shows all their works. So
it shows all the works that Okay, now it's not to say that if you come across a work and it's not in there, it's wrong. It could just have been overlooked at the time because the collector didn't know this was being done, or it could be anything. But it gives you a pretty good idea, right? And again, don't underestimate the value of taking it to a trusted source to show it to. And you are very well within your rights to do so.
Who is the trusted source?
Whoever you trust. I mean, you could trust a gallerist, you could trust an advisor, you could trust an auction person.
I'm a new person who wants to get into the art world. I don't know anyone, anything. How do I know who to trust?
So I think it depends on where the work has come from. So say it's, an artist that they say has, has been sold at Gallery Chemold. You can always ask the gallery. You can say, we get so many requests. Pandol Art Gallery represented this artist in the 60s. Can you tell me if this work ever came through your doors? Those are questions that most galleries will get with increasing frequency, because you have to be able to kind of satisfy yourself, right? And I'm sorry to say, but we just yesterday I got a work with the Pandola Gallery label on in my inbox. It's not correct. So there is a lot of room for mischief and a lot of room for kind of fabricating things to make it appear genuine. So you have to be able to kind of see, go through all those layers, which is why auction, while not infallible, is a great way to buy, because the minute you put a work into the public domain, it's on a website, it is on view at whichever auction house
If
is
it's a
being
forgery,
sold.
someone will.
Yes. And that's happened, right? We've seen things, we've been told things, we tell things. It's that somebody will kind of raise a red flag if there's a
But
problem.
does the auction house also do the due diligence before they? Is there any responsibility to the auction house?
I mean, we turn away more works than we take on. And
Right.
if we're not comfortable, we don't take it on.
So on some level, if my work is, if I want to buy something through an auction, I am because of the auction house's due diligence, I'm reasonably safe.
You're reasonably safe. Are you kind of beyond any problem? No. Because the quality of fakes today and the quality of stories that are spun is very high in terms of the, I know we've called potential old owners, oh, it's come from this family, that family, we've called them to say, well, is it
And
from
they're like,
them?
no.
Sometimes you can't get an answer. No one answers a phone or whatever. Then
Yeah, or they don't want to say.
and then you don't take it. You don't take it, because our biggest thing today is it's better to stay away from a work than get yourself into a more complicated situation, And we see it all the time. We're faced with this dilemma all the time. I mean, and sometimes you turn away a work and it turns up at another auction house and you're like, oh, well, I mean, maybe we should have, but that's okay. Again, it's part of the business, So, but yes, you are definitely committed to doing that amount of due diligence for your buyers and for ourselves. And the buyer has every right to ask you about it. Where is it from? What is the proof you have? Etc. Etc. Right? And if they are not convinced, that's okay. Then you don't bid on it. But there is already a huge vetting process that has taken place by the time it turns up in an auction.
There's an article in the papers recently about some business person, some private equity guy, someone who spent like 20 crores or something on some paintings. His lawyer introduced him to someone and he put a case on them, and then the ED raided them. It became a thing, which is good, I guess, if it's real that someone went through the whole criminal system. But that's so rare that happens. The other problem in this is that no one gets put through the clear investigation. Never happens really.
Yeah.
So what red flags should someone look out for when they're buying something?
I think first is price. There is nothing like a good deal.
People keep saying, I bought this.
I've got a great deal. There are no good deals.
Right.
Okay. So you must always question price. I think you must also always question perfect paperwork. Because, there is, very rare circumstances that you get a painting presented to you with perfect paperwork. And that paperwork should be kind of self-explanatory. So if it's in 5 books, the collector, that it's come from this museum to this family to that, that all kind of presents itself very clearly, very quickly. So if everything everything is just too perfect, again, question it,
Right.
And I can't say that you should not get the opinion of any trusted source, whoever your trusted source is. I'm sure there is somebody you are working with in the
Find
market.
a trusted source. I just want to talk to you about your role as the preeminent IPL auctioneer. Can't leave without talking about that. So, you run Pandol's auctions and you run IPL auctions. One has Mukesh Ambani and all the great owners of the teams, and the other one has Hussein's and Gaitonde's. What changes between those two rooms?
For my job, most of it remains the same, right? Because you're still trying to create energy, create a lively environment in which you are essentially facilitating purchases, right? So with sports people, and it could be kabaddi, WPL, IPL. It is more about just being a facilitator. You are not trying to run up a price. You're not trying to, create records in any way, because everybody's coming in with a finite sum of money, and everybody has to have, they have to fulfill certain requirements for the team. So it's not about that hype and creating the records. That hype has already happened, right? Because you are the owner of the team, you are sitting in the room. So by nature, being the second most valuable league in the world for the IPL and the rest, so that all has already happened. You're just facilitating it, making it as clear and as enjoyable a process as possible, so that players get their time, their fair time, and the best opportunity possible to be presented. But it's not up to me to comment on whether they are good, they are bad, they did well, they didn't do well. That's not my job at all. Versus an art auction, where of course it's all about the quality of the work, and this is the most unusual Gaitonde you've ever seen, which is why it should command a record price. So the mood is slightly different, and one room is all about strategy, and the art auctions are frankly
emotional, subjective.
It's fully driven by passion. So
Nobody needs to buy anything.
no,
Actually,
no, it's passion. And so if you decide that you want to pay 5 times the estimate, that's entirely your call, and a wonderful call.
passion
Right?
and personal bank balance. Well, here it's not. Here you have constraints,
Yeah.
many more constraints.
Exactly. So you approach it slightly differently.
You've described. First, I want to ask you in Bryn Mawr. What did you study in Bryn Mawr?
History of art.
Okay, so you knew even then you were into art. Tell me about your fascination with art.
I liked art as a child. I enjoyed looking at it. I was dragged to many museums by my parents, as I'm sure you were too.
No, I drag
No.
my children. I love museums, but my parents.
Okay.
No time for museums. No.
And some of that stuck, and it was just something that I thought I would like to try. And I remember I told my mum, because I have 3 older siblings who've all done economics and international relations, which was the key words in undergraduate studies in those days.
Of course. And these days also, sadly.
And then I said history of art. And she said, what? What are you going to do with a history of art degree? And I said, well, I don't know, but, we'll figure it out. And I did a class my freshman year on Renaissance painting, which remains one of my favorite areas to date. And I fell in love with the way they taught, what I learned. I loved connecting history to images, because all your history of art classes, by and large, are slide based. So you have visuals, and then you understand why they painted. And, one of the biggest debates in art criticism and art history and art theory is art created independent of the environment in which the artist lives, or is it very closely linked to cultural, social, economical, etc., etc.? And I've always kind of veered towards the latter, because I believe that you can't create art in a vacuum. But I'm sure there are many important modernists who will disagree with me. So that story and the way it was taught to us and the way it unfolded was just fascinating, and I loved it. And so I said I'll give it a go.
So you, just to be clear, when you went for that degree, and your parents said yes because they had to pay or whatever, did you have a career in mind?
So after my first year, I did. In my first year, I did. So I and I've said this several times when I've been asked. I read a novel as a young girl, sitting on a plane or whatever, going back. I read a book about a woman auctioneer, and I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Right? I had a great opportunity to work with Amrita Javeri, who was Christie's first representative in India. And I came back for a summer, and I remember figuring if I could work with her. And she gave me, very kindly, gave me a project, just to go and kind of do some research in Bombay, etc. And after that, we went from one thing to another, and I applied to Christie's program, internship program, a summer internship program in New York, which I ended up doing. And I had some really fantastic people help me along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, that you. I read somewhere that you sold baseball memorabilia
Yes.
to Americans, and that really prepared you for this as well.
So it was my first auction after you train, right, for a considerable amount of time as an auctioneer. And
In
then
Christie's.
At Christie's. And I was a bit cheeky in that I asked to be trained because I was way too young. I hadn't been there long enough. I was certainly not senior enough in the company. But there was a lovely lady who ran the program who was very happy to humor me and give me a go. So she let me come and watch the training
Yes.
classes.
Yes.
And then she said, now, come on, you come and try. And like I said, it just worked, And so my first auction, you always start in kind of, smaller categories, smaller sales, because it is nerve wracking at that time. There's no question. Your first sales are, it's hugely intimidating.
How old were you?
I was 25.
Right. In America, this is.
Yes.
In New York.
Yes.
So quite intimidating.
Yes. So it was at Christie's, in what we called at that time was Christie's East, which was a kind of smaller sale room.
Mhm.
And so it was a sale of baseball memorabilia. And she told me before the auction, she said, listen, this is a group of, largely American collectors who
Yeah.
are who know their area and their subject very well. And they're probably not going to be used to seeing you up there. So, little bit of just be careful and be prepared. But it was wonderful because it was a great experience. And you know what? You will make mistakes, but that's how you learn. So yes, you prepare yourself from day one and you keep learning. You never stop.
Got it. And you said it's so of the moment. You are right there. All the mistakes you make are there and forever.
Absolutely.
After that, you're in a room where in today's auctions, what is the average? 100 crores, 200 crores. What is the average? Your last auction, how much money?
A crore per 100 crore sale. It was a 98 crore hammer price. Yeah.
So you're in an auction where you're responsible for 100 crores worth of goods flowing through you. What kind of mental attitude do you need to have? How do you prepare yourself for this? What are the stresses that you go through?
I think everybody asks, do you still get nervous? Do you still get, and I do. And I think that is good because it keeps you on your toes. You do need to be prepared for any eventuality. And I think that is your biggest preparation, to know that everything may not go the way you want. And there will be hiccups. I mean, we had a day when all the phone lines went dead, all the landlines out, done. And Priya, my colleague, has raised her eyebrows at me from the phone banks, to say, okay, well, because everybody's looking at their phone and there's panic building in the room.
Right.
But you have to realize that, what, that's fine. So just take a pause and tell everybody to get on a mobile phone, because we don't usually use mobiles. We do it from landlines. And, get everybody calmly back on the line, and we'll just wait. Because you have to wait. There's nothing, you can't rush it. You can't do anything. So you have to just remain calm. I think if you keep calm and just be aware that you may need to find very quick solutions to problems, that's how you prepare. I mean, sometimes the internet is slow. So it's a bit about managing the room as well. But I think the calmer you are, it'll reflect as well with everybody. And I mean, my biggest asset is my team. I just work with a fantastic group of people.